Anger is a complex and often misunderstood emotion, and there's lots of different reasons for that. One of them is that the feeling of anger often gets lumped in automatically with behavior that goes along when we feel angry. So angry feelings are okay, aggressive, intimidating, and violent behavior is not, and we can separate the two. The way we grew up and our experience of anger, both by those around us and how they experienced our own anger, handled it, and supported it, is also a really important consideration. There's a really powerful quote by Dr. Becky that says, "Children only learn to regulate the emotions they are allowed to have." The same is true for us. Gender is another really important consideration. In society, it seems like anger seems to be one of the only emotions that we're comfortable with men having. And so their sadness, their fear, their vulnerability, sometimes even their excitement comes out as anger. For women, conversely, anger seems to be the only emotion we're really not allowed to have. And so when we're feeling angry, it tends to come out viewed as shame, sadness, overwhelm. And when we are angry, it's not viewed positively. Anger is also tricky because it's like the bodyguard of all the other emotions. So anger often comes up when we are feeling vulnerable, when we're feeling scared, sad, when we're feeling overwhelmed by an emotion. Anger tends to pop up as a way of helping us bring that vulnerability and that intensity of feelings away from us, because anger is directed outwardly. So in that way, it's often misunderstood, and rarely is there not something else lying under the surface below anger. Anger is also the most important agent of change that we have. Anger tells us when a value has been violated, when we're not being treated well, when we're not comfortable, when we're not safe, when we're not okay with where we are. Anger tells us that something needs to change. And when we can separate it from the behavior and separate it from all the messages from society about how we should or shouldn't experience anger, we're left with some really important messages about what's important to us and how to move forward. Anger, believe it or not, can actually be a very helpful emotion and can have really important messages for us if we're able to listen. Here's an exercise that you can try to begin to befriend your anger. I'd suggest grabbing a couple pieces of paper, some markers, and to pause this video as needed. So to start out, I want you to think of a recent event that made you feel mildly to moderately irritated, frustrated, annoyed, or angry. Try to avoid choosing something that's too overwhelming, as that can make it a little bit more complicated to do the exercise. As you start to focus on that angry feeling, notice how it shows up in your body, where it feels like it's coming from. And as you do that, start to represent it on the paper, ideally using color. Notice if there's a shape or words, images that go along with this. And as you start to focus on it and start to really deepen your understanding of this emotion, notice if it starts to feel stronger or lessen, if the body sensations change, if there's memories that come up, anything at all that you notice. There's no right or wrong here. And you're just going to jot it down on the piece of paper in a way that makes sense to you. As you're doing this, notice if there's any other parts of you, any other emotions that surface that are uncomfortable or that have a reaction to you getting to know the anger better. And jot that down on a different piece of paper, and then you can repeat this activity with those emotions once you're done. Once you've gotten everything about the anger out on the piece of paper, I want you to sit back and just notice how that feels. Notice how connected you feel to that feeling, and just see what that feeling is trying to tell you, if there's a knowing that comes from that. Once you're feeling more connected to that feeling, I want you to think about how the feeling may be trying to help you. So essentially what you're trying to notice is, what is your anger trying to accomplish? What does it see as its job? See what it says to you. See what you feel in your gut. Again, taking time to notice that as you are exploring what the job of your anger is, what it's trying to accomplish, if there's other thoughts and feelings that come up in the meantime, writing them down on a separate piece of paper and noticing if that's enough to kind of quiet that back and forth that you feel happening so that you can stay with this angry feeling. So once you feel like you've really connected with your anger and with it, what it's trying to accomplish for you, whether it does that or not, I want you to think about what the fear is that's driving that. What's the worry about what will happen if your anger can't do its job? So anger is an emotion that typically comes up after a trigger. So after something has happened that it makes us feel something else, whether that's shame, embarrassment, fear, sadness, vulnerability, isolation. Anger tends to show up in direct response. So the bigger that underlying emotion is, usually the bigger anger comes in to try to push that away. So notice that. Notice what the fear is of what happens if anger can't do its job. And once you've done that, I want you to again ask yourself how you feel toward anger now. Notice if there's other thoughts or feelings that still have some concerns about anger, or notice if you're feeling more compassion, more clarity, more calmness around this emotion that you were feeling. And as you notice how you feel towards this feeling, think about how you may want to connect with it differently in the future to continue to foster this different relationship. To think about and reflect on what your relationship with anger has been like over your life and what you would like it to be moving forward. As you wrap up this exercise, I'd encourage you to think about ways that you can continue to connect with this feeling in this new way. Lastly, you may have written down other thoughts and feelings that represent other parts of yourself while you were doing this exercise. And I encourage you to go back and repeat these steps with those thoughts and feelings.